So you can ask that question to her. There's another question that just came in. So this one is, I believe this would be a Teresa question. How do you define inappropriate touching versus assault versus sexual assault? And that might be a hard question to answer. So what if someone, and I'll read the follow-up to this. What if someone has shared an event involving their child, but are reluctant to report to authorities because the perpetrator is a family friend?
Well, I'll say that I would want a lot more information before I define anything. So how do you define inappropriate touching versus an assault? Well, if it's an inappropriate touch, it is an assault under the general definition of assault, which is any harmful or offensive touching. And then if it's, then it can be defined further as far as assaults or sexual assaults or a different type of assault. So it really just depends. And that's why we want to look at everything and look at all the evidence before we decide if it is, number one, an assault, is it a sexual assault, or where it fits.
Okay. So I see Michaela has her hand up. So Michaela, I have unmuted you, so you are able to talk.
Hi, my name is Michaela. I work for Compass Health here on island with the WISE team. I am wondering, I know I'm a mandatory reporter, and I'm wondering, I guess, if there's like a statute of limitations, say if a child comes to me and reports something that happened to them several years ago. I understand that I would still have to report it, but like if they wanted to press charges or anything, is there like limitations to that?
I'll take that if you want.
Go for it.
Michaela, what we tell everyone is always report and then let us figure out the legal issues of that later on. And I've answered that question and many times over. People are often wondering about that. And the recommendation is always report. Those laws have changed in the last few years, and they're much more victim-centered now. So it depends on a lot of factors, like when and how long ago and what that person's age was then and what the assault was. So you give us all the information, and then we'll look at that and then make that as part of our ultimate case decision.
Thank you, Teresa.
So I'm gonna go back to this same question. So it was the same question. What is, what if a child has disclosed something, but that person does not want to report to the authorities because the perpetrator is a family friend? So I'm not sure who would be the best person to take that question, but I do want to make sure that we answer that. So I will just tell you from the SAFE San Juan standpoint, we are, just so everybody knows that's attending this webinar, we are also mandated reporters. So if somebody tells us that the child has been abused or neglected, we do have to report. There are ways around that for our services. Not that that's what we want to do, but we can offer services to somebody if they're asking general questions and don't give us details or information about people and what has happened. So it can be difficult to get services without really knowing what has happened, but we're happy to work things through with you. I would highly recommend reaching out to Teresa if this happened. Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Teresa would talk to somebody without that person providing their name or any details and just answer questions.
Yeah, if I can. I'm never going to give someone legal advice, but I'm always happy to answer any questions I can. And also I was going to say that, they should call the sheriff's office too. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions when I can.
And Lucas, I feel like you maybe wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to any specific instances, but I mean, my feeling is that it's always worth reporting and kind of let the chips fall where they may, because ultimately, you know, if a person's guilty, then you know, odds are this isn't the first time that they've offended against somebody, and it probably wouldn't be the last. And then if they're not guilty, then our investigation will run its course, and that'll be that. I understand that, you know, it may sound a little trite to say that, but ultimately we'll do what we have to do, and if there's nothing there, there's nothing there, and our investigation will show that.
The other thing I'd want to add is a criminal investigation is much different than doing a sexual assault protection order, which is in the civil realm of the court system. So even if a investigation doesn't go anywhere and you feel like you still want to pursue protection for yourself or for your child, you can always come to SAFE San Juans and have that discussion about sexual assault protection order and what that would entail. In San Juan County, we actually have an attorney who will represent sexual assault victims for free in the civil protection order. So I just want everyone to know that. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised or anything else in the chat. I have just a couple pointed questions that just might be helpful to people. And I'll just go ahead and ask them. So the first question is, can a victim or a survivor have an advocate at trial with them if the case goes to trial?
Have a person at trial? Yes, they can. The victim advocate usually sits with victims in the courtroom, and they can't be up on the stand with them, but they can certainly be in the courtroom, and they're there to go to court with victims. You know, I think this has gone back many years, but one of the concerns is having victims in a courtroom all by themselves when the defendant is there and has so much support. So we want to make sure that victims have that same support network always in the courtroom. And so our victim advocates will escort a victim to court to make sure that there's, you know, just that they have that realm around them. And then they'll sit with them, sit in the courtroom while they're testifying or whatever it is they need. But yes.
Thank you. Another question is, once somebody reports a sexual assault, can they make the decision to not go forward with the investigation, both within the sheriff's office and with prosecution? So do they have the decision to just not want to go forward, not cooperate? And what does that look like for somebody?
Well, maybe I can speak for the sheriff's office first, and then maybe Teresa can pick up as far as prosecution goes. But I mean, we always want to respect people's autonomy in these kinds of things. So ultimately, we want to do what's best for the victim, and so obviously there's a million factors potentially at play there. But if we get something and then they decide that they don't want to participate in our investigation anymore, I guess we're not going to force the issue.
Thank you. Teresa, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Part of what we do is not forcing victims to do things that they don't want to do. We're not here to re-victimize anyone. Sometimes victims do change their mind after a case is started, and we always take that into consideration. Some cases can proceed without the victim. It just depends on the case. And so there's many factors to look at. What does the victim want to happen? What is a just result? Because we represent the state of Washington, not specific individuals. So we have to consider community safety. But some cases can go forward without that participation, and then some can't. So it just always depends. But we certainly do not want to traumatize or victimize anyone in the process.
Perfect, thank you. And that's what I figured that you were both going to say. I just wanted everyone else to know that. Are you able to, Teresa, probably best question for you, maybe for the Sheriff's Department, just give a little bit of information about a sexual assault forensic exam and just why somebody would want to do that and what that entails.
So I'll just say from my perspective, I think they would want to do it because it would be helpful to them. Depending on what the assault was, they're going to have questions about their own body. And this is a time for them to have a communication with a healthcare provider that's going to be very sensitive to what happened to them and discuss the aspects of that assault physically and emotionally. And so I think it would be to a person's benefit to go through that if they wanted to. And again, it's an examination by essentially your healthcare provider. So it's always going to be on the terms of what that victim or survivor needs at that moment.
Perfect, thank you. So there was one more question in the chat here. Has there been an increase in reporting during the pandemic? And that's maybe for the Sheriff's Office. Has there been an increase in reporting of sexual assaults? I'm guessing it's child or adult sexual assaults during the pandemic.
I can probably take that one, Courtney. So as far as an increase in the reporting, I don't know that there's necessarily been an increase in the reporting. We've been concerned about there being an increase after the shutdowns, kids being away from school, away from those areas that they do have those counselor supports that we get so many referrals from. There has been an increase in sexual crimes throughout the state. ICAC related internet crimes against children is up about 25% statewide, and I think those numbers are up about that high nationwide as well right now. People being at home, accessing their devices more often. So I think there's definitely a higher risk, and I think there's probably been more sexual assaults. It's just having that connection of those reports coming in. Since the schools started to become more in session, and the kids are starting to rebuild those relationships with those connections, I think we're still going to see a bit of an uptick in those reports. But it's one of those things. It's not directly correlated as of yet. It's just something that we fear may come about.
Thank you, Ray. I saw that somebody had their hand up. If you still have a question, I see that you lowered your hand. I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free to raise your hand again and I will go ahead and unmute you. Oh, there you are. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, I think you have yourself muted. So I just asked you to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Oh, there you are.
Hi, this is Lori. I just want to thank the panel. As a victim, this has been very informative, and thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for attending. Okay. So I don't see that anybody else has their hand raised or has posted anything in the chat. Panelists, does anyone else have any final thoughts or comments before we end? It doesn't look like it. Perfect. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for attending. We greatly appreciate being able to share this information with the public